Welcome to Ready, Set, Real Estate, where we will help empower and educate you on many different aspects of real estate, finance, and investing. Each week, we will expand your knowledge and uncover hidden truths. We will break down real-world scenarios and study actual how-to strategies. Anyone can buy real estate, but together we'll ensure you make smart real estate investment decisions. Now, here's your host, award-winning author, international speaker, and real estate educator, Lisa Gillett.
Is that time? Happy Wednesday, wherever you are on this still phenomenal planet. I am your host, Lisa Gillett, also known as Super Agent. I am happy about today's show because not only do I have a special guest, we love when we have guests on the show so that you don't hear me talk all the time. You get to hear from someone else and their knowledge, their experience. And, you know, when I do bring someone to the table here, to this real estate conversation, you know I've vetted my folks to bring value because that's what we do here at Ready, Set, Real Estate is we bring value to our real estate community. If you haven't already, make sure you let me know whether you're in the chat box, you're live, press 1, let me know you're here, press 2, lets me know you shared it. You know the price of admission here for the show is that you participate. So price of admission is letting us know that you're here, press that 1, and press 2 lets me know you shared it. If you are catching us on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay. That way, when you do that, what happens is I get a message and I can come back on and I still engage with you post the show. Also, I want to say shout out to those of you who have been tuning in on our radio podcast. You have been doing phenomenal. Really in our genre, meaning in our category. We broke records last year in terms of the amount of podcasts that we produced. And shout out to those who are listening in Kenya, in Germany. I think I had UK, Brazil. So just that's what I enjoy about the internet, this thing called Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi has made it that much greater for us to connect. And there's no secret. So there's no excuse that you can't say you didn't know. Because if someone shared this channel with you, they want you to know something about real estate. All right, so I have a special guest. Before I do that, I want to get into goals. Let's just talk about goals. I want to do the announcement for next week. Oh my goodness. Next week, we do have, I've got to bring it up. So next week, we actually have an event coming up. And I want to talk about that real quick. So I'm going to share my screen. Of course, I do want you to visit. That was sneak peek of our guest. He's ready. He's ready. So check out realestatelife.events. Realestatelife.events. That's where all our events registration page is held. Register for next week's event, Saturday, June 24th, 10 a.m. Hosted at one of our valued real estate partners, Southwest Escrow Corporation. They have a community room that I've been proudly sharing because I had the great opportunity to build out the community rooms at Southwest Escrow, not just for our community, but for our real estate industry professionals as well. With that, I also want to remind you, we are going to begin the agent training. I will have an agent training happening in July. More on that later. What's more importantly, we're going to talk about how to undo a reverse mortgage. And I know Tim's going to be like, oh, I can help you with that. How to undo a reverse mortgage, avoid foreclosure upon death of a senior borrower, because this is something we're seeing a lot more. I know today Tim is definitely going to touch on it a little bit, but I will bring him back because he is certified in reverse mortgages. So you talk about someone who's certified, experienced, trained, got tons of knowledge about reverse mortgages. Mr. Timothy Campbell is our guest today, who also has that knowledge bank to share with us. So I do want to bring him back on the show. Today we'll be focusing on ADUs. But for the sake of the event happening next Saturday, make sure you register. I will send out the blast for those of you who are on the email list. I know you registered for last month and we had to reschedule because nephew had a birthday party on the same day. and I just couldn't do both. So, family time is important. And so I just wanted to make sure that we still held that event, because a lot of you expressed interest in that topic. So I want to make sure that we share that. So here's the link. I've dropped it in the comments, realestatelife.events. If you're about that real estate life, check us out at realestatelife.events. And this is this month's workshop. It is free to attend. If you're an industry professional, there is a fee. You're welcome to come learn with us, but there is a fee as an industry professional, unless you're an agent of our brokerage, of course. So realestatelife.events. I've said it, realestatelife.events. We'll see you next week, okay? Of course, shout out those of you who are tuning in from our partner pages, ERG Enterprises. Lisa Gillett is a Facebook Watch channel. So is Ready Set Real Estate. We've got our YouTube channel at LA Super Agent on YouTube. And shout out to those of you who are tuning in from Black Events Los Angeles. Thank you, thank you, thank you all for sharing. Sharing is caring. All right, so that's that announcement. I've got that one out the way. And then what else is happening? Great things. Oh my goodness, hold up. I've got an announcement to make. I've got more announcements, and this one is going to be near and dear for sure. This one is near. I'm getting it ready, so I am getting it ready. This one is a near and dear. So let's get this one, and then we'll be back after our sponsor break. But I want to say, I would like to invite you all to join me. Join me in congratulating our newest team member, Kyle DeBlanc Gillette, who's our newest real estate advisor, joined Devenio Estates. That's our brokerage here in Southern California. He's our newest licensee, and it's near and dear because he's also my husband. So I am very proud to share him with you all, because if you haven't met him yet, you know he's very client service. He wants everyone to win. He goes above and beyond. It's not just me. A lot of my clients and friends, and those of you who've had an opportunity to meet Kyle, know that he gives his all. And so I don't expect anything less from him. Anything less would be uncivilized. And he is here to bring it and bring his wealth of knowledge, both in construction, with a construction background, rehab project management, and he also is a certified home inspector. So he's got a lot to bring to our real estate industry. And I must say, congratulations, Kyle. Hats off to you. I am very proud of you and your commitment to seeing this through. All right. That's my spiel. That's my spiel. Okay, cool. I'm excited. Let's be back after. I'll come right back after this sponsor break with our guest, Timothy Campbell. Perfect. That is Real Estate 100, the Teen and Millennial Investment Blueprint, authored by yours truly, Anthony Lee, and co-authored by myself. And if you haven't had this book, if you don't have this book in your library catalog, you are missing out, okay? So this is an award-winning book Anthony and I put together called Real Estate 100, the Teen and Millennial Investment Blueprint. And one thing that I can appreciate about putting this book together is that it really exposes those who are talking about the game of house hacking. And I'll definitely pick Tim's brain about this, because people want to invest in real estate. They want to house hack, but the math sometimes don't add up. And sometimes you have to walk away from a deal. And Tim doesn't know this, but he's taught me a few things in terms of walking away and thinking it through. And so I'm going to flip to this page, especially because if you leave it to your social media gurus, your Instagram gurus, they say, oh, buy a house for, $200,000 and the mortgage is, $1,600, and you charge rent of, 2,000 and the rest is profit. Not necessarily true, right? Because there's a schedule of expenses, right? And we've got this in the book this way. Schedule of expenses you've got to factor in, not just the mortgage, not just the mortgage. So we talk about that in the book. And for those of you who have read it, have shared, at least I now know that I probably don't want to be a landlord, or I probably don't want to invest. And it's just making sure that you have all the information. It's better that you know than get in over your head. All right. Well, without further ado, I welcome my guest. I'm going to do this first. So, Tim, I'm going to bring you on shortly. So I'm going to do it this way. I've got to move my screens around. So drum roll, right? So boom. All right. And I want to share my screen because I got to do it this way. So my guest, Timothy Campbell, Tim and I have been able to work over these years and do deals together. We met actually while I was in my farm. So some of you have heard me use that farm, geographic farming. And I came across Tim. He was in the field. He was working on one of his projects, and I was working on trying to get a listing, just looking at some deferred maintenance or deferred properties in the area and seeing if we can offer a solution, because that's what we do in real estate. I definitely have said we don't steal properties from our neighbors or community people. We're not robbing equity. We want everyone to everyone to win. And so that's what we look forward to, is doing real estate with ethics and moral. And Tim is one of the very few real estate investors that I still work with for that reason. And so real estate has been in his career for over 30 years, 30 years and counting. He grew up in Southern California, particularly the LA area, and have helped hundreds of families realize the American dream. He's created literally millions of dollars, not million, but millions of dollars in wealth for families and entrepreneurs, not just in real estate, but as a licensed contractor, a loan officer, and as a real estate investor. He's rehabbed and built hundreds of homes and has proven his ability and experience from building single family homes to multi-unit buildings. So not just the SFRs, but also the MFRs, right? So we love to use real estate terms and concepts here. So SFRs, those single family residents, to multi-family residents in Southern California. He has also been a licensed contractor for over 30 years. And he is, as I mentioned earlier, C2 reverse mortgage certified for 5 years and an owner of real estate in Southern California for 38 years. Tim says that owning real estate is the single best investment you could make for you and your future generations. He says that it is documented that children of parents who own real estate do better in school and are more likely to graduate from college. Not only does he bring a wealth of experience to your real estate transaction, but a broader perspective as well. Without further ado, I welcome Tim Campbell, Mr. Timothy Campbell, to the show. Tim, how are you? Oh, let me get you back. Let me get you back, Tim. Hold up. I got too many windows open. Let's bring Tim back. Okay, Tim. The suspense is building. Oh my goodness. Where is my window? That's incredible. Should be here. Is it here? Okay. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Welcome back, Tim. There you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Boy,
All right.
that introduction makes me sound so much better than I feel. Like, wow, I really appreciate those kind words. And it's true. I was impressed with Lisa. I was out working on a job and I actually saw her knocking on doors. And I was like, how rare is that? I mean, most people rely on the internet and they want to advertise I won't say the coward's way, but they don't want to get out and knock on doors and get face to face with people. And I knew when I saw her out knocking on doors, I was like, wow, really need to get to know her. And talking about bringing value, we have done deals together.
Yes.
We really have. And you brought a lot of value to me. Being on this show is one of them. I want to thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. In fact, welcome back. Did you get the link last night?
Thanks
It's
so much. I
5
did.
years. You were here 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
for those
Yeah.
of you, I want
And
to
I will
share
make it
this.
back more often if you'll have me.
Absolutely, because we were talking about reverse mortgages and seeing that that is such a prevalent, it's a popular product that gets pushed in our communities that has, I think, misconceptions wrapped around it. And so I
Hmm.
feel like to be able to open up and have this conversation, because uh, I I think what we need to is allow people to make the decisions that they need that best suit them without judgment from family and friends. And I
Hmm.
think that judgment comes from just not having the information, which is why we're having that workshop next week to talk about how to undo it, right? And undo it is mainly an approach for preserving the property for the family, because oftentimes those who take out the reverse mortgages have signed off that it's the bank's house already and I'm just living in it.
And
But
that
I
is
think
not true. That is
that's
not
not
true.
true,
Right.
right? It's a grave misconception
It
that
is.
I would like to work, and with your help, I'd like to work to undo that misconception, because every senior that I've spoken with a reverse mortgage, and those who've heard, right, the friends of the seniors said, "Oh, I don't want to do that because they gave their house to the bank," and that's not true. And so
That's not true. Right.
I'm doing my part, Tim, and I know you are. So
Right. Right. Well, a lot of that
okay,
misconception came from the early days of reverse mortgages. Reverse mortgages go back the first, well, the first HECM, home equity mortgage conversion is the is what HECM stands for. And a HECM is a type of reverse mortgage that uh, it's an FHA loan, so it does have mortgage insurance, but there are lots of stops in place now to help borrowers to not use all their equity at one time and ultimately lose the property. One of them is they only allow you to get a portion of your proceeds if you are, depending on what the proceeds are at closing. You can't get them all at one time. There was a time when you could take it all, and you know, there unfortunately were family members and others that came along and took advantage of.
oh, so they don't do single payments now?
They
Oh,
do,
you're just
they
saying
do,
all of the
but
equity.
you can't get it all. You cannot get it all at one time. There's a certain percentage of it that you
Got
can
it.
get. Yeah.
Got it. We'll hold that thought and that conversation for another show.
Okay.
Today
And I don't
is
want to just throw up and show up and throw up. I mean, you ask the questions and I'll
show
answer
up
them
and throw up.
as best I can.
Right. No, no. Today we want to focus on ADUs because it's still a
Okay.
hot topic. It's still a
It
very much
is.
hot topic. We
And
are here.
that's a wealth builder as well. That's what one of the things I like so much about ADUs.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we are in episode 212. So that means that we've got over 200 episodes on real estate content. And
Okay.
Tim, you are adding to our knowledge bank here. So
Well, great.
on ADUs, let's just kind of slow it down a bit for those who are new, especially because we have an audience that crosses the California state line. And so they may not be familiar with that term, but they have family that may be here. And this is why I can appreciate that we're so expansive in our reach, is because Tim, I just got an email from an attorney for a family that's in Atlanta that we're going to be probating a property here.
Mm,
And so
congratulations.
thank you. And see, that's why it's important for them to understand like the value and the potential of things like ADUs and what does that mean and how that translates to, you know, an increase in value of land, or maybe an opportunity if they decide to retain the property, right? There's just different avenues. So talk to us. What is an ADU?
An ADU is actually an accessory dwelling unit. That's
Okay.
what ADU stands for. Um, they used to be called granny flats. They've been called splits, mother-in-law units, and for a long time they were illegal. I can remember back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, I rehabbed a property that had one, and they being the building inspector, made me tear out everything on the inside of this unit and pour cement down the drain so it couldn't be used again.
Oh,
And then yeah, because they
what?
were illegal. It wasn't permitted, and you could not get permits to do it once upon a time. Today, it's all the rage.
It is all the rage. And
Yeah.
you've reminded me, I think you and I were having this conversation the other day. I needed to, because of that, you hit it on the head, because they were once upon a time illegal.
Mhm.
I need to revisit a conversation with a client about their ADU, that the city was telling them to do that. This was prior to this entire movement of, I think my last notes, if I'm not mistaken, and I think you and I had shared this with one of the listings, one of the properties you had. Homeowners or property owners have until 2025 to be get their ADU compliant before they start to issue, I guess, fines. Do you recall that that they've put that into? I know I recall it was a 5-year window, and I think that window was effective 2020 to 2025 is when property owners have to comply with that. Did you hear that or read the same?
I heard talk of it. There was certainly talk of it before COVID, and then once COVID happened, I kind of started concentrating on what's going on with rent control laws as a property owner because that interests
Ah,
me. But I did hear that they being the city was going to city of Los Angeles, and we should clarify that because the city of Los Angeles is a different animal from many other cities throughout the country. I mean, we do things different, but I heard that they were going to restrict non-owner occupants from doing accessory dwelling units. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen because there's a shortage of housing, and that kind of seems counter,
owner
would
occupants.
counteract creating housing by having ADUs. But that's what I heard. Then there's Senate Bill SB 9 and 10, which passed in California, that says that you can divide uh, a lot of 5,000 square feet into four uh, four plots, and you can build on each one of them. I don't know if you can sell them separately. Those
You
kinds of
can.
things. You
You
can.
can.
Okay.
You can sell them separately. And in fact, it's affected us industry wide because the purchase agreement now has been updated for that
Right.
purpose. Is that it has a blurb on or page one of the contract part, not all the disclosure part. But
Hmm.
if you recall, there's a line that says the address may not be the same as the property. And I think it's because of the partitioning, the parcel, right? That property. So it's interesting because our contracts already reflect that. And there
Right.
is blurb regarding ADU. And I don't know if you know this, but there's like a new certified ADU inspector designation that
Oh wow, I didn't
is
know that.
available uh,
Yeah.
to inspect ADUs. I mean, it's impacted our business so much that we're constantly learning about this. And for me, one of the questions that
Right.
has come up,
And and and,
and
and real
go
estate
ahead,
is a practice. Mhm.
go ahead. No,
No,
finish
I was just
that.
going to say, real estate is a practice. To your point that you just made, it's like lawyers have a practice, doctors have a practice. We have to be constantly learning because things are changing so much in our business and right around us. As homeowners, if you want to, you don't have to. What does it take to be a expert homeowner? There's not a certification for that, but we need to know what's going on around
Right,
us and how it affects us.
absolutely,
SB 9 and
especially
10 passed, or was it earlier this year? Was it this year? SB 9 and 10, Senate Bill 9 and 10 passed.
it went into effect, yes, because it changes the dynamic for how my investors. In fact, I've seen developers, and same with you, right? It's like the rules now. I get a laundry list for
Hmm.
uh, investors, developers looking at purchase a property, and one of those, as one of these bills has affected their ability to build on that, is whether they're tenants or owner occupants, and how long have they been there. And they've had to have been residing there. I think the owner had
Is it
to
two
reside there
years?
for at least what, 5 years. Is it
I'm not sure. I don't want to quote you on that. I mean, this stuff is so new. I'm not sure. In
You're
fact,
like
I've never
Lisa.
run
I just
across a
rely on
property as
you. You're like Lisa. I
I'm
just
sorry.
rely because those are the things that I'm looking out for when I write up the contract terms, and it's just learning. Tim, when you see sometimes we have this conversation, I say, hey,
Sure.
I'm going to need to pull IDs and proof of address, and these are things so that you don't run into a hiccup with the city when you decide to tear it down or build it up, and they want to make sure that you didn't put a tenant out. And
Right.
so we now have to do all this extra documentation during the real estate transaction, which and can really turn somebody off, especially if an owner is being asked to, produce proof of residence of from the last 5 years, right? And a copy of their driver's license. I've seen it. I've closed the deals where those were the terms. And it's so that the builder is protected from when they get in to that process of tearing it down and building it up, that the city doesn't come after them for that, hey, you vacated a tenant and now there's consequences. So
Sure.
ADUs,
Here-
would you say are the equivalent of granny flats, mother-in-law suites?
Uh, it's another dwelling unit. It's not considered a second unit. In fact, lenders still consider a single family dwelling and not two units.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really?
And there are two types of ADUs. There's a separate ADU and then there's a junior ADU. And then a junior ADU um, can be attached to the main dwelling. So if you wanted to do, let's say you could do a 500 square foot room addition to the main dwelling, you could have that could be a flat itself with a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living area, and that's perfectly legal. There was a
So,
time when that was kind of poo-pooed by the building inspection department. If they suspected that you were going to have a separate entrance with a unit with his own bedroom, bathroom, and so forth, you had to hide that. You had to have the plumbing behind the wall, and then after it passed its inspection, you could add the cabinets and so forth. Today, it's perfectly acceptable. The junior ADU.
wow. So this whole concept of ADUs has come a long way.
It has.
What
It
has
has.
what has been the driving force, do you think, that has changed this, that it's more receptive or more welcomed?
A shortage of housing.
Shortage of housing.
Um, yeah, and the national numbers are somewhere around, I don't know, somewhere 5 million. There's a shortage of 5 million homes that we need to keep pace with the growth of population,
Mm,
and there's just a shortage of housing, and that's why I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe that real estate will stay strong for next decade or so. I mean, I hear talk of bubbles and things like that. Affordability is the biggest issue right now, and I think the number is like 68% of homeowners have mortgages, and of that 68%, I think the number was 60% of them have interest rates at 4% or less, and then 30% of those mortgages are at 3% or less.
mm,
So homeowners are looking at their low interest rate that they have locked in for 30 years as an asset. And, interest rates have doubled. And you have people that have those low interest rates that are saying, I'm not going to move. Why would I? And there lies the problem, because where are they going to go?
right.
Yeah.
Where
So
are they
there's a
going to
pure
go?
shortage of housing. And that's good if you own.
So speaking of that's a great segue into the next question that I've gotten, and various people call me on this in terms of, can I put an ADU on my property? So that's the question: is every property eligible for an ADU?
Generally, yes. I've seen ADUs added to 12-unit buildings. I've seen them added to single families as well. The issue becomes there are certain factors that affect whether you can or can't. I've seen properties that have a what do you call it, an easement, a utility easement. So there's a
Okay.
pole there, and for whatever reason they won't allow it. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. It's really up to DWP.
Mm.
Yeah.
So have you seen with that? I'm just kind of
So to
thinking
answer your
out.
question, I have seen properties that you cannot get an ADU on it, but most of the time you can get an ADU on your property. I've
Would
seen
you
more of it where,
do you mind
pardon?
sharing which property or what hindered that particular property from getting an ADU?
It was the utility easement.
Okay. So
Yeah.
utility easement. So the utility pole and not cost effective for the city or the owner to go in and probably move it. It's just too much involved.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen a utility pole moved. I guess it happens, but yeah, sometimes it could be more expensive than what it's worth. Perhaps they'd make you put it underground, bury the wires underground. I don't know. But that was the reason that I saw that you could not get an approval on one. They do, it's kind of they used to do, and I still think that they do it kind of a point system. If you're so close to a bus stop, if you're within a quarter mile of a bus stop,
Hmm.
that's points for it. So most of the time you can do an ADU onto your property.
Got it.
Yeah. I know it varies from municipality to municipality. For instance, the city and the county and the city of Inglewood. Inglewood for a long time did not allow ADUs in the city, and they had these restrictions that stopped you from doing it. For instance, they had a 16-foot high restriction for ADUs. So if you had a smaller lot and you wanted to put an ADU on top of the garage, you couldn't, because the garage itself is probably 8 or 9 feet, and then you put an 8 or 9 foot ADU on top of that, you're above the 16.
You're above the 16. Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe Inglewood changed that.
They
Inglewood
have.
was one
I have a colleague and a friend he put an ADU in
on
he's
top of
in
the garage.
Inglewood.
Okay,
Not on top of the garage, but he put an ADU in Inglewood.
right, right.
Succeeded
But
in
for a
that.
long time, the city of Inglewood did not want them, and the state pretty much had to make them do it.
Right.
The approval process varies from city to city. And I had one in the county of Los Angeles. I think I told you about it. Took 9 months to get
Wow.
an approval for a garage conversion ADU. We weren't adding any square footage. It was converting a garage to an ADU, one bedroom, one bath, simple. It took 9 months.
Uh,
And I still hear that they're buried. Um, that's in the county.
wow. And
Other
something like
cities
that.
are
So
taking less time.
something like that can definitely affect. I call it carrying cost, because I'm going to transition into this
Absolutely.
next question that oftentimes I get called about, and this is a very popular one. How do
Okay.
you pay for an ADU?
Okay.
So, how do you pay for an ADU? And I oftentimes am answering that depending on what are you trying to get done or what can be done. Can you walk us through, since you have done this? I mean, you've looked at the numbers both from a financing perspective, both from from the construction, from converting or building ground up. What can an owner, and let's maybe talk square footage and maybe range, right? If we're just like you said in this example of a one bedroom, just something garage conversion. This is not ground up stuff that I've been seeing. Some people get really fancy too. I mean,
Absolutely. You can make
I've
an
seen some
ADU. I've seen
fancy
some really
stuff.
nice, yeah, ADUs. Yeah. Well, generally a garage in the city of Los Angeles, and that's what I'm talking about. Well, I can go outside of the city of Los Angeles. The houses that were built after World War II, postmodern types of houses uh, in Southern California, have a 20 by 20 garage, which is 400
Okay.
square feet.
400
So
square feet. Okay.
400 square feet, 20 by 20. That's your typical standard two-car garage. Um, what was your question?
How
You
do
were
you
asking
pay
me,
for it? So just
how do
basically,
you pay for it?
let's
Okay.
talk about the numbers. So before we discuss how to pay for it, um, in this example, based on what you're saying, 400 square feet, you're correct converting that garage. What would what can a property owner expect that would cost them? Because where I want to hint on is I touched on it on the last episode, which is people are being preyed upon in terms of how to pay for this stuff. Like that's, I
Right.
think real money is there, right? Like oh,
Right.
you want an ADU? This is the newest thing. And people have no concept of what something like this could range. And so they're being stuck with these six-figure bills that you go, whoa.
If you could do a basic one, and let me say this, with an ADU, you have to get plans approved. You have to go through the entitlement process. So you're going to have to do, most likely, you're going to have to do some work to the foundation. Um, there's going to be some framing because back then garages weren't framed as well as the houses were. If it's an older garage, there's probably water damaged or termite damaged wood. We have
Mm,
termites that are
right.
constantly eating. You're gonna have to add plumbing, electrical. It's gonna have to have its own address. And these are all things that add to the cost of doing an ADU. If you could keep the cost, just a very basic, just a basic one, you keep it at 150 or so. Lumber and drywall goes up from time to time. The last one I did, that was about the cost of it for a 400 square foot garage. And you look at it as a one bedroom in most areas of Los Angeles will probably rent for around $1,900, $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month is a nice even number. So if you were to spend $150,000 on
Are you
a
factoring in utilities in that? I'm going to check an ADU listing that I came across, and they were asking for 1,800, a really beautifully nicely done
Mhm.
ADU, 90047, not too far by
Right.
the El Super, um,
Mhm.
and
Manchester and Western, that area.
Manchester and Western, nicely done. In fact,
Mhm.
I've learned that I'm related by marriage to the agents and the brokers and the owners
Wow.
that did that property. And so they were asking for 18. I think they were asking for 21 and they had to drop it to 18. So
Mhm.
I'm going to go check back to see what they ended up getting for it. Uh, because I think that's the big picture, right? That's the big question in all of this is how much you're paying for it and how much you think you can get for it.
Well, you mentioned utilities. Um, I believe you can still separate the. I know you can separate the gas. As gas meter's not a problem. You can put its own electric meter there, and I believe the city of Los Angeles DWP is allowing you to separate the water meters as well.
Got it.
And so you could have it so where the tenant pays their own utilities. It's kind of up to you.
Yeah. So with that, so now I wanted to go back to I'm kind of jumping around and I'm just conversing just as I would offline because when we
Okay.
talk, my mind starts going. So
Uh-huh.
even
Ask
with the
away.
separate meters, Tim, in terms of financing, they have issues like if you show there's a separate meter,
When you
they
say
still
you have to, if you're built when you're building the ADU, you have to you're gonna have to pay for that meter, the water meter from DWP. You also have DWP come out and they do what's called a meter spot, and they will look at your property and tell you whether they want a dual what's called a dual gang meter. That's 2 meters in one, and they'll tell you where they want that meter to go.
okay.
Does that answer that question?
So I get that part. Does that
Okay.
affect the financing of whether the lender looks at it as a 2 units to have the separate meters? That was my question. I wanted to
It,
be more
it's
clear.
it's still an accessory dwelling unit. It's still an ADU. It's not a second unit. Now you could add a second unit if the property is zoned for 2 units, but we're talking R1
Oh,
residential one properties can have an accessory dwelling unit, not a second unit, although it functionally does the same thing. It provides housing, but they don't account for parking with an ADU.
got it. So what you're telling me is that the industry, the
And they being the city. I'm sorry, I keep saying they. I like to identify who they is.
got it. The city. I want to get
Uh-huh.
back to the financing part because I'm wearing my broker hat right now on how
Sure.
to finance one of these purchases because I've seen I've seen and heard buyers get pushback from the lenders on the ADUs. Like there was one done, nicely done. I think they wanted 800 and something thousand. Buyers were on board and the lender said no because it was not considered 2 units. And I'm sure that's what we're referring to here. So what it appears to be, what we're discussing is that the finance, it's probably Federal Finance Housing Agency, has not caught up, right? The underwriting has not caught up with ADUs being, I mean, even though it functions as a second unit, that it's not being recognized as that second unit, thereby leaving
I have
money on
not
the
seen that.
table.
I have not seen that. I have seen certain lenders that will not let you count that income from the ADU. But
Wow.
most of the time, it's a single family with an ADU. The square footage on public records for the ADU is added in with the property. You're going to pay school taxes, even if it's less than for 500 square feet or less on a room addition, you don't have to pay school taxes. But you do have to pay school taxes on an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, whether it's 300 square feet, 400 square feet, or 500 square feet. You're going to pay that school tax. I have not seen lenders that say because it's not a second unit, we're not going to allow you to finance it. I've seen where they won't. You can get a higher loan amount if it's 2 units, but because it's a single family with an ADU, they still count it as a 1 unit.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Because let's say someone was qualified to buy 2 units, it increases their purchasing power because they can factor in the rental income
sure.
and see something on the market with an ADU. What you're saying to me, if I'm clear, that property likely won't qualify for that particular financing or that scenario, that loan scenario,
You mean as a 2 unit?
as a 2 unit.
No, it will not. It will not.
Wow. I didn't
But
know that.
I've
I
not
didn't know
seen,
that. So I'm learning.
right, right. I have not seen a lender deny a loan because it had an ADU. I've not seen that.
So I've ran into scenarios where and I'm gonna move away from my personal scenarios and making a show about me.
Was your
But
loan a confirm? Was it a conforming loan, or was it a conforming loan?
yes, it was a conforming loan.
Okay.
Well,
Because when you get into non-conforming loans, that particular investor might not want to purchase a property that has an ADU on it for whatever reason. But most of your FHA, your Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae loans, I have found that they will allow the income from the ADU.
okay, right. That's why I was a little confused because I'm like, well, I've seen them go through, but you're saying that some won't allow the income from the ADU, and that could
Some non-conforming lenders.
okay, because that would definitely kill that poo-poo that whole thing.
Right.
In order to, because it's on both sides, right? As an agent here, and we're listing the property and go ADU, and then we go, all right, so we're gonna bump it up to this price to make that work because they can get the rental income. But then
Absolutely.
now I'm going to run into an issue in financing that particular purchase. So that's why I pay attention to those things, like where property is located, what's the demographic, what are the loan products that you can expect someone's going to use. All that is important when you're thinking about the property.
Right.
Okay.
There are non-QM loans out there right now that owner occupied, one could get into it for 10% down. And it doesn't matter what, they don't want to see your 1040s. All they want to look at are your bank statements. And if you give them 12 months worth of bank statements, the terms are one way, 24 months worth of bank statements, and it's another way.
I have a couple scenarios that I've just got called on today about people having yesterday and today. People
Mhm.
having cash, not on the
Right.
books, no bank statements. I have to sidebar with you and call you. They've got the money, they want to purchase, but we run into those issues with it's like, oh, but I don't have pay stubs. And I'm like, okay, do you have bank statements? No, I don't have bank statements. Yeah, oh, mattress money, right? Like, how do you deal with that?
Right.
Let me let
We'll,
so let
we'll
me
talk.
pivot.
We'll talk later on that.
We'll talk later about that. how do you pay for an ADU? So I just want to recap. So you can expect, uh, was it 400 square foot conversion, about 150,000, right? So
That's
how do
just that's a very general number. I don't know
Very
the
general
condition of
number,
this
very
property,
general number. I'm not
and we
holding you
need a set
to
of approved plans really to be talking numbers. But that's a very general number
right. Okay. So based on that, just general number in this hypothetical,
in
how
this
do you
market,
find
as with lumber priced as it is right now. I'm putting a whole bunch of qualifiers in there. I
right,
learned that
right.
from you.
And for that reason, you reminded me to throw the disclaimer. I normally throw a disclaimer up on the show, so I'll read it out loud. I'll read it out aloud for our listening audience to pause. Right, the information provided on this show should not be considered legal or tax advice. Please seek legal and tax advice from those reputable licensed professionals. Although Mr. Timothy Campbell is a licensed contractor, he is not giving you a quote. He's not giving you an estimate, and the information he's sharing is not binding upon him. All right. So
Thanks so much.
absolutely. So with that being said, so these hard numbers in terms of estimate, how do you finance something like that? What have you seen people do? Just kind of walk us through someone who wants to do an ADU conversion. They're doing it for various reasons, right? Age in place, allow the kids to come home, age, and extended family scenarios. They want to create a retirement plan in the future for rental income. How do you finance something like this?
Okay, let's kind of work backward. You take $150,000 ADU.
Okay.
What's a good number that they would receive per month in rent?
A good number. I like the 1800. I like the
Okay.
1800. I mean, you can push 2000 depending where,
Right, right.
but let's say 1800. One bedroom, 1800
Do you
ADU.
have a calculator? 1800 divided 150,000 divided by 1800. What is that? And I didn't bring
Okay.
my calculator with me.
That's okay. I've got my real estate calculator handy. See, people didn't know they were taking a real estate class today.
Yeah.
Oh, so we'd take 150,000 is what you said?
Yes, ma'am. Divide
Divided
that
by
by 1800.
1800 is $83.33. Oh, no, no, no.
No, 83 months. So you're talking 7 years it would take to pay for that at $1,800 per month.
Okay, hold on. Why did that not do what I wanted it to do? 83, right, so 83 is what it came out
That's
to,
the number of months that it would take.
months, so divided
And
by
figure
12,
84,
so
84
just
months,
under
7 years.
7 months, 6.94, got it, so
That's 7
under
years.
7 years for
Yes,
it to pay for itself.
correct. So that said, you would probably want to do a cash out refi.
Okay,
Because
explain
even
what
at
that is, so cash out refinance, what is that? Walk us through that.
that's where you refinance your property and you pull cash out. It's in the name. And there are two ways of doing it. You can, well, many ways of doing it, but the two most common ways, you can get a second trust deed if there's enough equity. If you are fortunate enough to have a 3 or 4% interest rate, you might want you might want to get a second because then the blended rate would be lower than uh, getting a brand new first trust deed at 7%. And
So
even
you
at
so you're saying, okay, let me just recap. So the first option is a second trust deed, and this would be by way of a refinance.
correct. Anytime you refinance, do anything with the financing of your property, you're refinancing it. That's the technical definition of it. So if you're getting a HELOC, you're pulling cash out, you're getting a loan on the property and it's secured with a note and deed of trust on that property, then it is a refinance.
Got
You're
it.
refinancing it.
I get asked all the time because people who are owners have equity, don't really understand the concept of how you get money out. It's not like an ATM, you slide your card and then money comes out of it. They want
Sure.
to understand, how do you actually get the money out of the house? And so for those who've never played Monopoly, where you turn the little card over that says you've mortgaged it after you bought it cash,
Right. Uh,
that's the effect. That's what a refinance is you flip the card over that says you've mortgaged your property for this amount. Um,
but would you agree with me in saying that if someone were to refinance their property and pull cash out to add an ADU, um, is healthy debt?
I would agree it's healthy debt, because I would be looking at how long, right? So just the way you did it, 150,000 if that's my cost, general hypothetical scenario for a garage conversion, divided by how much rent I can collect, $1,800. So that's a 7-year period. That's the same math we do when we're talking about, do we buy down the rate? How long we expect to keep the property? Does it make
Sure.
sense on these, the origination fees and all these other factors? So for me, long term, right? Because ADU should be long game,
Mhm.
right?
I would
Long
agree.
game, long game. Yes, I think it is healthy debt. That 7 years. Oh my gosh, people are living in their properties for now 10 years, is what I'm
Right,
hearing. The
probably 10
numbers,
years.
they're
So
now
after
holding it
that
for
7
10
years,
years.
it's pure profit.
It's pure profit.
Right.
Wow.
And you take it further, if you took, let's say you got an interest only loan, and you've got a calculator there, and this is just an easy way of the reason that I'm using interest only. Take 150,000
Okay.
times 0.07 and divide that by 12.
Okay.
What is that number?
$875.
Okay, so that's what the money at 7% on an interest only loan would cost you. It'd be a little bit more when you add principal on there, if you had a loan that was reducing the principal. And that doesn't include the increase in taxes or insurance, because your taxes are going to go up. Your property is going to be reassessed by the county, the tax collector. They always
Hmm.
want their portion of it. You're going to get a nice letter in the mail saying, hey, there's some plans submitted, and we want to know what you built and how much it's going to cost. But if you're charging $1,800 a month and the money's costing you $800 a month, I mean, that's a 2.5 to 1. So for every $1 you spend, you're getting what, $2.25 back or so? Is that
Right. So not factoring in the
taxes or
increase
insurance?
taxes and insurance.
Yeah, because the place has to be insured. Your
Right.
insurance is going to go up, and your taxes are going to increase.
Right. Say it again for the people in the back, because people forget this when they're being sold and told about whether they should, let some other company rent their property, rent their parcel or rent their garage for 30 years and they can have it back. And they're going to be paid $5,000 per year. That's one of the offers that I've seen.
Right.
The company will pay you $5,000,
It's about $400 per month, $410 a month.
$400 per month.
Yeah.
Um, but they've got to factor in there's going to be an increase in your insurance and property tax because you've done a whole garage conversion. Not to add,
And that's basically what they're paying you for. After you pay for the taxes and insurance, you're not going to have a
you're
lot
not
left.
going to have anything left, right? They've
Mhm.
reaped all the benefits. As
And
you could say,
I would stay away from that. I mean, as a homeowner, if you hire professionals, you're going to pay more to hire a professional. You're going to pay more to have a contractor versus a licensed contractor that's bonded and that has an extensive resume. You're going to pay more, but it's worth it. It's like insurance. It's when you go someplace and get some guys that you don't know anything about that aren't licensed. They may do good work. I've seen some that do good work, and I've seen others where they don't.
right,
And there's, you can try to go after them if you could, but when you hire a licensed person, they're bonded and they have incentive to do your job and do it properly.
right. CJ Clarence Johnson just chimed in. I was expecting CJ to chime in too because he's a proponent of ADUs and doing it right. And in fact, I think he did with a HELOC. In fact, he
Mhm.
he was the person I was referring to who succeeded in Inglewood, and he just reminded me. So CJ, thank you for that. He says the midterm rental market is also a great choice for avoiding short-term rent rules while maximizing rents. He says we're getting 2,400 to 2,700 monthly for our one bedroom, 400 square foot garage, which we talked about, right? Garage conversion. So thank you, CJ, for reminding me of that. For that reason, Tim and I were also talking about I have rooms for rent on a property. This is not a garage conversion, but just a single family where
Mhm.
we're renting out the rooms instead of the entire unit. And that's exactly the strategy we're going for, is to to go the midterm rental market to get more money and maximize those rents. So
Sure.
thank you for that
But it is
reminder.
more work. It is more work. But if you've got the skills to do it, hey, there's extra money there.
Right. So can you maybe paint that? I mean, for those people who are not familiar with the what work would be that would entail.
Basically an Airbnb kind of unit where you have
Hmm.
people that do short-term rentals. So you got someone that, and depending on where the property is, if you're close to the Coliseum, to the SoFi Stadium that everybody's goo goo gaga over, that it certainly helps. The closer you are to attractions here in Southern California, the more money you'll get.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the work you're referring to is just the maintenance, just the flipping it and
Oh yeah,
maintaining.
it's got to be furnished. Versus regular ADU where the tenant provides their own refrigerator, stove, etc. A number I've heard is you want to keep it as nice as you can, and you want to keep it under $1,000 per room. I mean, so if you're doing a short term rental, you have to generally you want to provide internet. You have to have dishes, stove, refrigerator, appliances, towels, linen. The list goes on and on, and you have to there's just some accounting that needs to be done, but yeah, i, I hope, does that answer it?
Yeah, that answers it. It provides a perspective because what I was thinking again. That's why I was glad CJ was on and you're on to just share that perspective outside of what I was thinking, especially because what's recent for me, I'm getting inundated. I've probably had over 200 phone calls on housing, right? People looking for a place to rent, and people are looking for a place to live, not to be there for 3 months, 6 months, a month. Like people are really without housing.
Sure.
And so um when I say to them, the room is 1450 a month or whatever it is, they're like, I'm looking for a whole house, or I'm looking for a 2 bedroom, and the max I'm willing to pay is $2,000. And
You're
so
not going to be here in Los Angeles.
you're
You're
not
going to
going
be
to be
somewhere
here
else.
in Los Angeles. That's
Yeah.
that's the hard part, right? That is the hard part. The hard realities. There's a lot of reality setting in right now, and I'm not going to get into that because doing property management, I take all kinds of phone calls, and I got to weather through that. So great. So in terms of paying for it, we had option one. You mentioned about the second trust deed. Second option, would you, this is not financial advice, but I would imagine people are using their retirement income, pension or 401k to draw money to pay for something like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option. Most of the time, an ADU on most properties, once again, we're $1,800 a month. What is 18 times 12? Can you calculate that for me?
Yeah, say
These
that
are
again.
these are really raw numbers too. 1,800
1800.
times 12 is what?
So we're at 21,600.
Okay, and 21,600 divided by, we're once again at that number of 150,000. What is that? What is that as a percentage?
Divided by what?
By 150,000.
144. Oh, sorry. 2166 divided by 150. Percentage 14.
Is that better than the stock market? 14% on your money? I mean, that's
Yeah,
another way of looking at it. I'm not
that is
saying it
another
is or
way
it
of
isn't.
looking at it. Right.
You know, yeah.
14% return.
So if you
Great
were to
point.
get a 14% return on your 401k or your retirement account, I don't know, is that good or not good? That would be up to that particular individual. But
Right.
borrowing the money against your property and paying 7% on a conforming loan, that's one of those individual questions as well. If you've got a 3% interest rate, your interest rate is going to double, right? I mean, you're going
Mm,
from more than double. You're going from 3% to 7%. So whether you do it from a first trust deed, second trust deed, or a HELOC, with the HELOC, you can pay any of those loans down. I mean, some loans have prepayment penalties, but generally they're further. If you were to get one, it would be a prepayment penalty in the first 5 years. But you can still, they will still take your money. They will still allow you. You just would have to pay a penalty if you paid it down so far.
Got it.
Um, so
That's one of the
without getting too technical, it's
right.
kind of it's up to the individual. Is 14% good? It might be good for one person, another it's not. Some a younger person with a 401k that's not large enough, they may want to, but they have the equity in their property, they may want to do that. There are loans out there that will finance your home improvements, and they will do a feasibility study. And in that feasibility study, they will base the value of your property on what it's going to be, and not what it is now. When you get that kind of loan, generally speaking, they're going to, which may be good for some borrowers. They do a draw method. It's done on a draw basis. So um, they hold the money back in an escrow account and they distribute it as the work's being done. That's generally what I find with those.
Right. Let me remind those who are just joining us, we're on with Mr. Timothy Campbell, licensed contractor, loan officer, and real estate investor, over 3 decades of experience. And we've worked together, and it's been a joy to learn so much. And so he's back on the show. I had him on the show 5 years ago, and it was timely to have this discussion again. So thanks for joining us, Tim. CJ had a comment here that I wanted to also
Sure.
highlight, because this is what you were talking about earlier. And so CJ shares that many cities are restricting STR uses of ADUs. I think this is what SB 9 and 10 that you're referring to,
Los
where
Angeles is one of those cities.
one of those cities that's putting those restrictions. So he adds midterm is 30-day plus and targets traveling professionals and nurses who stay 90 to 100 days, 20 days on average. He's mentioning Furnished Finders as one of their best referral source.
Very good
Because
source.
so Furnished Finder, I think that, so are you signed up to pay, what is it, 90? I'm like hesitant on paying it, CJ. So, but because you're saying you're pulling the leads from it, I think I'm gonna go ahead and bite the bullet and pay for it. But I was kind of like, I don't want to pay for that. I don't want to pay
Right.
for it.
And it's tough getting qualified with those companies. I mean, they want your social security number. They want to know a lot about you to make sure that.
Oh, let me ask CJ a quick question about that, because I don't know if it was Furnished Finders or another site. Do they come and inspect the property? Because I read one, there was traveling nurse and they had to like score the cleanliness, and like they're scoring it for that particular target market. Was Furnished Finders one of those where they're actually coming out to inspect the condition and rating your ADU or your unit? Let me know if that's one, because that's one question I want to know, because I do have an occupant in this unit already, so I just want to make sure in terms of how that works. But I'll go back to Tim and I were talking about it, and I started to build my profile, and then it was like, okay, give me your credit card, and I was like,
Right, as you should be. Someone's asking for your credit card, you should be very
yeah.
leery of that.
Okay, so he says 1 time a year fee, definitely worth it. No inspection. I don't remember giving them my social security number because the tenants pay direct. Okay,
Okay.
I feel good. I feel a whole lot better. See, this is why we listen. This is so much game on this show. So much gems. Press 1, let me know you hear. Press 2, make sure you shared it. Somebody needs to hear this information today. Let's continue with the questions. How are you on time? Because I definitely have gone over my regular show time, but I do have a couple more questions. I just want to be mindful of your time, Tim.
Sure, we could do another 10-15 minutes.
Perfect. 10 minutes and I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So
And I'll
this
come
other
back. This isn't the
this
last time.
yeah, this other question here, I'll pop in here, is about these programs as it relates to, and you may or may not know, but I think as we're talking about how to fill these spaces, how to fill the vacancy of the ADU. So a homeowner who does an ADU, because I've been hearing this, is it true? Is it true that you have to use your ADU to fill vacancies for the homeless population or unhoused population and or seniors?
You're asking me that no, I've not heard that. You can rent it to whomever you like. Family member, it could be a family member.
So
Can be also
you're not limited to who you can rent it to. You're not obligated to rent it just to a particular demographic of people.
not in the city of Los Angeles. Maybe there's some new ordinance and Santa Monica has some weird stuff that
Tim's like, I don't know what these cities are doing with
yeah,
all their
right.
new rules.
And all of them don't maybe they make sense in a meeting, but when you put it on paper and start talking to people and asking questions, they don't make a lot of sense. To answer your question, I have not heard that before.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So, um,
I have
what?
heard of hotels that have to report their vacancies every night,
Okay.
and they let homeless people live in those. And we're talking all hotels, not just
Oh,
the
really? So
yeah,
all hotels.
all
Wow.
hotels. So some really nice hotels that have homeless people up and down the hallway, and that you know doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are people that won't go anywhere without their dogs,
Right.
and you know
Wow. Okay. See,
got
so
nothing against dogs, but
right.
there's a place for everything.
Right. So, and even that we've got to be careful because there's a whole thing with emotional support animals, Tim.
Well,
That
we're talking, if it's a seeing eye dog or a dog that helps someone that's handicapped, that's one thing. But
right.
everybody's dog is a seems as though they are a
And that's one of those things
emotional
that
support animal.
that's one of the things that is a challenge is because then people, they're seeing that there's the door open for dogs who are for disability purposes and or emotional support, and then everyone's like, oh, my dog is for emotional support, and it has that adverse effect where it's ruining it for those who really need those
Absolutely.
services. And those are things that landlords, homeowners, property managers, those are things we're up against. Is we want to be compliant, but then there are those who are abusing uh, kind of the opportunities presented to support those with disabilities or special needs. um, Okay, so I'm glad I presented this question because again, misconception. But what I have found, and you're right, it depends on the city. LA actually has a program where if you participate, they do have a program. If you allow them to, uh, if you use them, they will manage the entire experience of that client if they are unhoused or a senior. And so they come with a caseworker, case management person that will be your point of contact so that
The
you can,
VA has a program like that as well, and I've used the
the
VA.
VASH program, right?
Yeah, and the workers when you call them, they come out. They actually come and deal with the tenants that have issues.
Right. So I want to go back to this because this comment here that CJ mentioned about this, these rules here, because this goes to what you were saying in terms of there's this entire movement about allowing ADUs to happen is because it's supposed to fill the need of vacancies and not necessarily fatten the pockets of property owners and investors. And so they've been attempting to counter this. Um, what do you foresee how that would affect our market as real estate professionals with more limitations being imposed by the city as to what can be done with those ADUs? Because if we've been presenting it in the way or the light that CJ has said here, that, oh, I'm going midterm, I'm going to go that market. Um, but this is an owner occupied property subject to these rules. How do you expect that would affect our market in terms of the selling and buying of ADUs?
The selling and buying of properties with ADUs. Gosh, I don't know how to answer that. You're saying so. Let me make sure I understand you correctly. You're asking, what do you think the restrictions that the city puts on homeowners and property owners of properties that have ADUs, the restrictions?
Yes.
I think they ultimately hurt the housing stock. I mean, people don't like investors, and there are the public in the city council. It seems as though property owners have become demonized, providers of housing.
Mm,
And most
wow.
housing nationally, anyway, is uh, provided by individuals, people like you and I that just own a building and rent it out. Now, that number could change over time because there are real estate investment trusts. There are entire communities and areas where they're building it. They're building these communities just to rent them out. So, for instance, Chase has a community that they are building. I heard on the news where they are renting it out. They'll never sell any of the properties in there. So a person that lives in one of those properties will pay their rent. They'll bank with Chase, and I'm using Chase. Just it could be any institution. Um, they pay their rent to that institution. They pay their car payment to that institution, and they bank with that institution. That I don't particularly care for that. I think that I really do like um, individual homeowners, and I think that as you put restrictions on them, why would you do it if you're not going to make money? And that's why we're all tuned into this. We, want a piece of the American pie,
Right.
and real estate is a great way to do it. So when you put restrictions on there, ultimately it hurts. When you add new restrictions to what you have to do to build an ADU, that hurts. It adds to the cost, and ultimately it goes up. Somebody's got to pay for it, and we'll pay for it in the form of the public will pay for it in the form of rent, higher rent.
I just think it's interesting. I mean, and you hit it on the head. It's
I
spot
hope
on.
I answered the question. Yeah.
I agree with everything that you shared. It does ultimately hurt the industry, and those who have the ability to create more housing stock, and it's just creating an adverse effect. I really enjoy this conversation. I know we can continue it, but those of you who are interested to learn more, I did share that. Let me just put it here. But Tim, how can people connect with you? How can they learn more? I mean, you're a licensed contractor. You've done ADUs. You've done projects small and large. We shared single family to multifamily. You're a loan officer, active in the business. Is it okay for me to share that I work with you for creative financing as well? I already did. um, how can people connect with you, Tim? Did I lose you? Oh, it looks like he froze. Hold on, let's see if I can bring him back. Tim? Right when he froze. Darn. Looks like he froze. But I'll plug him in here. So how can people connect with Tim Campbell? Let me send you a number here. You can check him out at lifemortgagefunding.com. Lifemortgagefunding.com. Tim's got a number here. I just want to make sure I give you the right number because he's been using the 866 number. He said either phone number is fine to reach him at, and I also wanted to plug in, I've got this here. You can also reach him at 323-600-6966. For those of you who are tuning in on our radio podcast, that's 323-600-6966. Timothy Campbell, loan officer, NMLS number 246905. He's a licensed loan officer, also holds a DRE license as well. And he is someone who's knowledgeable, experienced, and will genuinely help you and guide you through that decision as whether it's a loan, it's an ADU, whatever your financing needs are. He is definitely someone that you can connect with and lean on. We lost him, but it's okay. Tim, we've got you covered. We've got your information plugged in here. For those, oh, he popped on back. Okay, Tim.
I am so sorry.
It was almost like cute. I was like, Tim, how can they connect with you? And we didn't hear from you. And I
I'm
plugged it
back
in.
now.
But what's the phone number or best way for people to connect with you? I gave the lifemortgagefunding.com website. I provided the 323-600-6966 number. Any other way or means you'd like for people to reach out to you? When are you available? What are you available for? Tim?
Or you could call me toll free 866-796. Sure. 866-796-7253. Or feel free to T Campbell at c2financialcorp.com. That's T Campbell, Campbell, like the soup, at c2financialcorp.com. Thank you,
We've
Lisa.
got you. Absolutely. We've got you plugged in here. Great. Thank you again for your time. This has been very informative. I've
Thanks for
learned a
having me.
lot more than I knew an hour and 15 minutes ago.
Very
So
good. Very good.
absolutely. It's all, I'm relieved when I learn more. I am usually pleased and relieved when I know more, because with that knowledge bank, I can share with my tribe, my community. And you've always been available to me when I'm, pick up the phone and I said, let me call Tim. What's Tim think, or what do you have to say about it? So I'm extending Timothy Campbell to you all, as well as a resource. So don't hesitate to reach out to him.
Please do.
All right.
Yes.
With that being said, thank you. This has been another information-packed episode on Ready, Set, Real Estate. We do not falter, with bringing this valuable information. Again, information pack. I did go over time today, but thanks again for hanging with us. We'll see you next week again for another information-packed episode on your #1 real estate podcast. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Ready, Set, Real Estate podcast with Lisa Gillett, the LA Super Agent. Please like, subscribe, and share LA Super Agent everywhere on your favorite podcast platform.